So there's one bait that people reach to when fishing gets extremely tough that you can fish in super shallow water and super deep water. But this time of year, the one problem that we start to have with it is it gets caught up in a lot of grass, fish get deeper offshore and a lot of rock, and you tend to lose them a lot. What bait is that? That's a Ned rig. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to break down all the different ways that I rig a Ned rig to keep it from getting hung up in the grass, getting it hung up in the rock, and I'm even going to show you some of the tips that I use to catch really big fish on a Ned rig, because a stereotype that people kind of put on it is it only catches small fish, and that couldn't be further from the truth, especially this time of year when those fish are dealing with so much pressure. So we're going to get into all of that right now. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to break down all the different ways you can rig a Ned rig to keep you from getting hung up in the grass, in the rock, and show you some cool little modifications to throw some of the smaller ones and also some of the bigger ones to break the idea that Ned rigs only catch small fish. Because when people think about Ned rigs, they think about smallmouth, but I've top 10 in a lot of major tournaments fishing Ned rigs, catching largemouth, even on places like the Tennessee River. So what we're going to do first, like I said, is we're going to break down some different ways to rig it. And this is the stereotypical Ned rig size right here. You can see it is a 3-inch or 2.5-inch Ned rig. And the way that most people rig this is they just put it straight on a Ned rig hook, like you see here, pull it down, and there you go. You have a Ned rig. But a lot of times the struggle is fishing a Ned rig. If you're fishing around rock, you're gonna get them hung up. And what I will tell you is the first thing that I want to talk about is when you're fishing in rock, the biggest thing to note is the heavier your head, the more you're going to get stuck. So I always try to go with the lightest head possible that I can for what I need to get down, but that I'm not constantly getting hung up. And if I keep getting hung up, I will go lighter and lighter. But Z-Man actually has a hook that I use to avoid getting hung up in that rock. That hook is the Ned Locks. So it's an EWG hook designed into a Ned rig hook. So now when I fish a Ned rig, I can actually just Texas rig it on this EWG hook, and what that's going to do is that's going to keep me from getting hung up in a lot of different situations, especially around grass, because now as you can see that is perfectly weedless. And the only thing that I'll do to this hook is I will actually take and bend this point up a little bit to make it a little bit more even with the eye of that hook, so that way when I Texas rig it, it doesn't have the opportunity to get hung up, but it'll actually increase my hookup ratio by tilting that hook point up a little bit. But that little Ned EWG right there, it is a fire little hook. I throw that in grass, I throw that in rock, and again, I like to go super light on the weights, especially if I'm fishing river systems, anywhere that has current. This is what I go to, and you can see this little hook even has the paint all wore off the head from how long I was fishing it, because I was able to fish it around literally everything. You can skip it up around laydowns, you can put it every single place you would ever want to put a Ned rig. Now, as far as a Ned rig only catching little fish, when you're fishing a Ned rig, a lot of times people just think there's the one size. There's actually a bunch of different sizes of Ned rigs, and one of my favorite sizes is a step up from this little guy. The next step they have is this medium-sized Ned rig. So you can see right away the size difference of that, and it is a fish catching machine, because we think about one of the favorite baits of people down south is a shaky head. Well, dude, this is your shaky head right here. This fits every place that a shaky head would go for me, but it just gives it that Ned rig finesse style profile, but it gives it a little bit bigger profile. So I have the opportunity to catch a lot of bigger fish with it, and that's why I like to pick it up. The only problem is a lot of your stereotypical Ned rig hooks, they're a little small for that. They work, but they're a little small for that. So what I've gone and done is I've actually poured my own Ned rig hook, and with that I upgraded the hook to make it a little bit bigger. And I'll have a couple different options linked down below, but the key is just finding a hook that fits that profile, so that way you have the opportunity to catch those fish without having to lose them because they're just picking up half of it. And let's be honest, if you're fishing for largemouth anyway, when they eat it, they just suck it all in. So if you have to throw a smaller hook, you're gonna be just fine anyway. The last way that I want to talk about rigging a Ned rig is actually on a drop shot. So I've actually taken and tied a little #1 drop shot hook onto here, and what you do is you just thread that onto the nose of that Ned rig, and that is going to be a great way to keep it up out of the rock. If you find yourself getting hung up in that rock constantly, this is one that Jacob Wheeler's kept under the radar for a long time. If you watch any of his smallmouth videos, he is always throwing a Ned rig on a drop shot, and that way you can adjust the weight and break the weights off and not the entire business end of this bait. And what that's going to do is also keep that up out of the rocks, keep it in those fish's faces a little bit more, and give you a lot more opportunity to catch those fish when they have really good visibility and they can see it from a long ways away, because now it'll be up off the bottom. So when it comes to fishing a Ned rig like we have right here, we have it rigged up on this EWG Ned rig hook. You can see right here. What we're going to do is we're going to line ourselves up using our electronics, but you don't have to do that. You could just line yourself up with a rocky bank like we have right here, or just a grass edge, whatever you happen to be comfortable fishing around, or wherever you're fishing. And all you're going to want to do is line your cast up and throw it out. And with a Ned rig, it's crucial to let that bait fall all the way down to the bottom. You want that bait to go all the way down, and you can see that because I have this high-vis yellow Cortland braid. I can watch my line, and whenever my line hits the bottom, I can see it stop. I'll show you again. We have a bit of a little rocky patch right up here in front of us. So all I'm going to do is line my cast up, throw my Ned rig out, and I'm going to watch my high-vis yellow braid on the water, and you'll see it pulling, 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 and then when it hits the bottom right there, it'll stop. All I'm going to do is reel up my slack and give it a couple light shakes. Let it hit the bottom, couple light shakes. This is the best retrieve for when I'm fishing around extremely rocky bottoms, because what that'll do is that'll actually lift it up out of the rock and let it fall back down in. If I am on a sandy or a gravelly bottom, I will do more of this pull and then reel up my slack and pull, because that'll allow it to keep dragging on the bottom. Especially if your fish are super bottom oriented, that's going to be one of the best ways that you can move that. The other way that you can fish it is throw it back out again, watch that high-vis yellow braid. Whenever it hits the bottom, you'll see it stop just like that. Is you can give it big hops, because what that'll do is that'll really attract fish's attention from a ways off, and it'll really give them a good look at it from wherever you happen to be or wherever they happen to be, so you can give it big hops. Another thing you can do is if you're fishing around some stuff on the bottom that you don't necessarily want to get hung up in, you can let it hit the bottom like we're going to here, like we have every other time, and then all you're gonna do is give it a hop and then fish it slow like a swim bait and just shake it a little bit, because for some reason that do nothing action as you're reeling it and shaking it really just gets those fish's attention, especially when you're around a lot of pressure, and you can really catch a lot of fish doing that with just that do nothing slow reel action. There's one. Bingo. Whew. Just like that. Nice Ned rig fish. You can see that EWG Ned in his mouth right there. Gave me the opportunity to get it into some places that I typically can't get it. People think it's just a small fish bait. That's a big, nice large mouth right there. You see that hook is buried into his mouth right there. See if we can't pop that sucker out of there. But there we go. Just like that. Put him back and we'll get back after another one. Now what we're going to talk about is the gear that I'm specifically throwing, so that way when you're out there on the water you know exactly what you need to be throwing, and I'll even break down some of my favorite colors so that way you know what baits I really like to throw. So the beauty of the Ned rig is it basically looks like absolutely nothing but everything all in the same go. So it's one of those baits where if you're not sure what to pick up, this is one of those baits that I go with, because I know I'm going to get a bunch of bites on it. I know I'm going to get some confidence, and I know that as I'm getting bites, I'm going to start to piece together what those fish are doing, what they're holding on, what time of year it is, and I can really just start to get an idea on the fishery that I'm on. So if you get to the lake and you're like, man, I have no idea what I'm going to go with, but I know it's going to be a tough time of year, the Ned rig. That's the way I go. If I see a lot of other guys on the water, I'm going to throw a Ned rig. And it might be some of those bigger size Ned rigs, because I know I'm still going to get some bigger than average bites on it, but I still want to get bit. And that is the goal with this bait, is to get some bites and get a feel for the body of water. So if you're not sure what to throw, the Ned rig always has your back. So the last thing I want to do is show you a few different colors that I really like, and then we're going to show you the gear that I throw before we get into the Bible verse of the week, so that way I can help get you guys a little bit closer to God, and who couldn't benefit from hearing the words of the Lord. So a few good colors that I like are going to be, I really only throw like 3 colors. One of which is really out there. This is Coppertreuse. You've seen it a bunch of times on the videos. And dude, if you're around smallmouth or any kind of dirty water, that chartreuse just sticks out. Super awesome. They call it Coppertreuse. They might as well just call it green pumpkin chartreuse, because it's green pumpkin, copper flakes with chartreuse in it, and it just sticks out and gets bit flat out. When you have any kind of lack of visibility, that's the one I go with. And then when I'm around clean water, I know you guys are thinking I'm going to say the deal. I like Goby Bryant. Goby Bryant is like a light green pumpkin with a really like bait fish pearlisk underneath of it with copper and purple flake. And dude, I love the deal, love the color of the deal, but sometimes you get big mismatches in colors versus for me, when I throw Goby Bryant, it seems like all of them look exactly the same, which is this super fire color. And dude, clean water, that's the money one. And then obviously you have your green pumpkin. It's hard to beat green pumpkin. And I use that even when I'm throwing the bigger styles. So when I'm even throwing some of these bigger sizes, I have yoga pants in there too as another one, which is basically just black. But I still throw the same colors when I go to the larger sizes because they still flat out get bit. So I only carry about 3 colors for that specific reason. That way I'm not over complicating anything with it. And if nothing else gets bit, I know green pumpkin will. Now to the gear that I throw it on, because if you don't have the right gear when it comes to throwing a Ned rig, dude, you can lose a lot of fish. The reel, I like a 3000 size reel. This is Arc Gravity spinning reel. And the rod is an Arc Essence 7-1 medium fast action. Dude, it is a great light bait rod. I use it for all my drop shots. I use it for shaky heads. I use it for pretty much everything finesse. And dude, it flat out catches fish. They might as well call this one the bite getter, because when they get bit on this deal, dude, they come to the house. Almost every single one of them. And it's a 7-1, so it's pretty good all around. But it's just a great combo. That little deal right there, you can throw every finesse bait you could possibly think of on, and you're going to catch a lot of fish. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to dive into the good word of the Lord. So if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not going to watch the rest of this. But I urge every single one of you to. But now we're going to dive into the book of Ezekiel, because that is where I have been lately, and there's something that has extremely caught my eye. And I got to find the exact passage of it. And so the passage that I want to talk about is Ezekiel, and it is labeled Ezekiel as a watchman. It is Ezekiel 3:16. And it says, "Son of man, I have made you a watchman over the house of Israel. When you hear a word from my mouth, give them a warning from me. If I say to the wicked person, you will surely die, but you do not warn him, you do not speak out to warn him about his wicked way in order to save his life, the wicked person will die for his iniquity, yet I will hold you responsible for his blood." And it goes on to say this a couple different times in there, that he will hold him responsible. If he does not say something to that wicked person, the wicked person will still die, but he will not hold it against the wicked person. He's going to hold it against Ezekiel for not telling him about it, because the Lord was going to speak through Ezekiel to that man to try to get him to turn around and do his wicked ways. Now, if he warns him and the man still continues to do it, there's going to be no blame on Ezekiel, because at least he tried. How many people in your life can you think of right now that you are looking at going, dude, you're on the wrong path, but you haven't said anything? Because it's a hard topic to bring up. I know I've been there in my personal life. How do you bring that conversation up? Because it's going to be tough. You just got to try, man. You literally just have to try to warn them for what they're doing, because you know the path they're on is a bad one. You know it's a wicked one, and you know it's not going to lead to anything but damnation, pretty much. Like, it is the wrong way to be going. And you got to warn them. You got to warn them. If you truly love them, you got to warn them. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Think of 3 people in your life that are walking down the wrong path, and just get out of your way and warn them. Doesn't matter. You have to try. And that's all I want to talk about today, is just trying. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along. But God bless every single one of you guys, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.